we will now proceed with the lighting of the traditional oil lamp, which is a custom in Sri Lanka that symbolizes the ushering in of blessings and positive energy. So to do the honors, I would like to invite the following dignitaries to please step forward. Guest of honor, Dr. Asela Gunawardena, Director General of Health Services. His Excellency Weedbo, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands to Sri Lanka. Dr. Rui Paulo de Jesus, Country Representative, World Health Organization. Mr. Fungsho Wang Yel, Officer in Charge, UNFPA. Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arulkumaran, former President, International Federation of Gynecology and Obstetrics. Professor Indralal De Silva, Emeritus Professor of Demography, University of Colombo. Professor Sanath Lanarol, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist, Castle Street Hospital for Women Teaching. Professor Kalinga Tudor Silva, Emeritus Professor in Sociology, University of Peradeniya. Dr. Lakshman Senanayaka, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist, Specialist in Gender-Based Violence. Dr. Surantha Pereira, President, Sri Lanka Medical Association. Dr. S.M. Arnold, Deputy Director General, Public Health Services. Dr. Samidhi Samarakon, Deputy Director General, Education, Training and Research. Dr. Janaki Vidhanapathirana, Director Planning, Ministry of Health and Mass Media. Dr. Vindhya Kumarapeli, Director, Policy and Strategies, Ministry of Health. Dr. Anand Vijayavikrama, Chairman, National Medicines Regulatory Authority. Dr. Ranjit Batuantudave, Director, Health Promotion Bureau. Dr. Chandima Siritunga, Director, Family Health Bureau. Dr. Arpita Das, Senior Performance, Learning and Impact Advisor, IPPF SARO. Mrs. Aruni Merceline, President, Board of Directors, FPA Sri Lanka, and Dr. Ruchita Pereira, Executive Director, FPA Sri Lanka. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and privilege to welcome you all as we gather to celebrate yet another milestone in this journey of advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights. Over the years, through discussions, collaborations, and conferences, the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka has worked tirelessly to raise awareness, build knowledge, and advocate for the dignity and well-being of all people. And today, we take an important step forward in that journey with the launch of ReproSex, the International Journal on Sexual and Reproductive Health. Ladies and gentlemen, sexual and reproductive health is not a luxury. It's a human right. And investing in its research, knowledge, and services is an investment in creating stronger individuals, healthier families, a better society, better country, and a better world. Ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what this journal aims to create. This journal is dedicated to advancing global understanding of sexual and reproductive health and rights. It is the official publication of the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, an accredited member of the International Planned Parenthood Federation. Published twice a year, in June and December, ReproSex will feature original research, reviews, commentaries, case reports, and policy analyses, filling critical gaps in knowledge and helping to shape policies and practices that safeguard rights across all ages, gender identities, and sexual orientations. Ladies and gentlemen, therefore, as we embark on this journey of officially launching the first such journal in Sri Lanka, to formally welcome all of you and commence our proceedings, it is my greatest pleasure to welcome to the lectern Mrs. Aruni Marceline, President, Board of Directors, FPA Sri Lanka. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together as she joins us up.
Good morning. Guest of honor, Dr. Asela Gunawardena, Director General of Health Services. Keynote speaker, Professor Sabaratnam Arulkumaran, Editors-in-Chief, Professor Indralal De Silva, and Professor Sanat Lanarol, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. It is my great pleasure to warmly welcome you to this historic occasion, the launch of ReproSex Journal, the first peer-reviewed open access journal in Sri Lanka dedicated to advancing global understanding of sexual and reproductive health and rights. This journal is the official publication of the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, an accredited member of the International Planned Parenthood Federation since 1954. Beginning today, ReproSex International Journal on Sexual and Reproductive Health will be published twice a year. This moment marks a significant milestone in our association's long journey, reflecting decades of commitment to family planning, sexual health, and the rights of people across Sri Lanka. The mission of ReproSex International Journal on Sexual and Reproductive Health is to publish high-quality, original research, reviews, policy analysis that address critical gaps in SRHR knowledge. This aligns perfectly with FPA Sri Lanka's long-standing vision that sexual and reproductive health is a fundamental human right for every individual across the life course. As a long-standing volunteer of FPA, I feel especially proud that this initiative will amplify the voices of a wide range of experts, including youth leaders and technical advisory committees. Last year's ReproSex 2024 conference, Sri Lanka's first international conference on SRH, drew more than 150 abstracts from 20 countries. Building on that momentum, this journal will now sustain the dialogue throughout the year by offering a trusted platform for evidence and exchange. ReproSex Journal will help shape policies, improve services, and strengthen programs that advance our shared mission. Today's launch is both a celebration of our achievements and a call to action to deepen partnerships, mentor emerging researchers, and broaden public engagement with SRH issues. Let us all commit to making ReproSex a lasting success, using this journal to engage actively in shaping SRH policy and practice, and advancing evidence-based advocacy to uphold the rights and health of women, men, youth, and marginalized communities. Together, we can ensure that this journal becomes a living legacy of FPA Sri Lanka's contribution to sexual and reproductive health and rights. Finally, I wish to express my heartfelt gratitude for the tireless efforts and voluntary contributions of our editors-in-chief, editorial board, the International Editorial Committee, the organizing committee of this event, and the dedicated editorial staff whose commitment and passion have made this achievement possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Aruni Marceline, for your warm words of welcome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we move further, let's take a few minutes to reflect back on a milestone that set the stage for today. Last year, we hosted ReproSex 2024, the first ever international conference on sexual and reproductive health in Sri Lanka. On the 5th and 6th of November, more than 300 global change makers, researchers, activists, healthcare professionals, and policy leaders came together under the theme Universal Access to Sexual and Reproductive Health as a Right for All. It was a space where a powerful commitment was made to advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights on both local and global fronts. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to request all of you to direct your attention to the screen now as we take a closer look.
people or adolescents, it's very difficult for anyone.
This international conference marks a historic moment for Sri Lanka as we host for the first time.
This conference is a landmark and it represents an essential milestone for sexual and reproductive health, not only for Sri Lanka, but for the global community.
This conference represents a new chapter in the field of sexual and reproductive health in Sri Lanka.
Well, after that glimpse into the wonderful conference that took place last year, we are ready to continue with the agenda this morning, and we have a distinguished line of speakers ready to address us here today. To begin, it is my great pleasure to invite to the stage one of the co-chairs of the journal. His leadership and vision have been invaluable in shaping the direction of this initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause and join me in warmly welcoming Emeritus Professor of Demography, University of Colombo, Professor Indralal De Silva.
Guest of the honor, Dr. Asela Gunawardena, DG Health Services, and our keynote speaker, Professor Sabharatnam, and WHO representative of Sri Lanka, and also Professor Tudor, and Professor Sanath, and Professor Aruni, and also Dr. Ruchita, members of the editorial committee, and all the special invitees. Welcome and good morning to all of you. Well, my presentation is basically divided into two parts. One is about the journal, and also one is about the important SRH matter in Sri Lanka. You can see that from the screen, what was the main reason for this, the production of this particular journal. Of course, we had this particular conference last November, and there was a request from all the authors, so I would say most of the authors, they requested whether there is any possibility of publishing their research work. Therefore, we had discussions during the conference as well as after the conference. Therefore, the Family Planning Association, after discussing with our research groups and the consultative groups, we have decided to start or publish this particular journal. Now, the birth of the journal as I mentioned you that there was a request and we have responded to their request. That's how the birth was taken place of this particular journal. The journal, International Journal on Sexual and Reproductive Health. Now, I want to say the difficulties also. The birth is fine, but keeping the momentum is very difficult. I think it is very common in any international journal or local journal to receive high quality journal articles are somewhat difficult. Therefore, we have to try and also open requests for all the researchers and also academics and also the practitioners who are here. We request you to submit your academic work or your more practical or policy related subject matters to this particular journal to enhance the subject area. Now I want to move to some particular area on SRH which is quite important. Now one of the serious issue in Sri Lanka SRH is concerned, ultra low fertility. Now some of you may be concerned about why this ultra low fertility is related to SRH. Any country, suppose the fertility moved to very low level, definitely there are a number of factors are contributing. Number one, the men and women away from entering into the marriage union, and also then postponement of the marriage, and also use of contraception and use of abortion, and we can notice that subfertility and many other factors are there. Now, I will focus particularly on the sharp decline of fertility in Sri Lanka and reliable estimates and wider implications. That's what I'm going to discuss very briefly. In Sri Lanka, we are noticing that very sharp decline of fertility in Sri Lanka. Therefore, this particular material is available on the journal. Later on, you can see that one. Now, this particular presentation or this particular information we collected from various organizations, and this particular journal article which appearing on this new journal, the titling Ultra Low Fertility Implications, Policy Options, a Case of Sri Lanka, co-authored by my another co-author, Ranjit Disilla, who is here. And therefore, I will quickly move into some of the important areas. Now, I have a couple of research questions as a teacher. Every time I ask the questions from the audience, but I am asking questions by myself and answering. Now, emerging research questions. What is the current fertility level? Or what is the level of reproduction in Sri Lanka right now? And also, there is a particular term we call TFR, Total Fertility Rate. I believe most of you know what is exactly meant by total fertility rate, but it is meant by average number of live births a woman would have during her lifetime. On the other hand, once she approaches age 50, how many children she have produced during her lifetime. Therefore, second question is basically, in Sri Lanka, TFR were to decline to an ultra low level. Sri Lankan fertility is declining ultra low level, which is 1.3. That means a woman on average produces only 1.3 children now, as we estimated. With what would be the potential implications? Now, fertility declining is one thing, and there are many implications. Then the last question I'm asking, when that fertility falls below replacement level, should policy interventions be undertaken? Now, this is a controversial question, whether we have to undertake any policy discussion about this one. I think Ministry also has taken a number of discussions. I also participated. Now you can see one particular information looking at South Korea. South Korea has been listed as the lowest fertility in the world, lowest low fertility in the world. But look at, some time back, if you can see from here, orange line is South Africa, the blue line is Sri Lanka. In 1960s and 70s, Sri Lanka had somewhat lower fertility than the South Korea. But later on, South Korean fertility declined very significantly, and by 2016, it was well below the replacement level. replacement level is marked with the green line. That means any country reach the replacement level, they can maintain the population at zero growth level. Looking at the graph with South Korea and Sri Lanka, the South Korea has been identified as the lowest low fertility in the world. But however, in this particular graph, South Korea, of course, you can see that in this particular graph, they are well below the replacement level. 2016, Sri Lanka was slightly above the replacement level. But what is the important from this particular graph? You can see what is I presented here in that corner. South Korean fertility is now 0.7. That is the lowest fertility in the world. Now the question comes, 2024, what is our fertility rate? Now what we have is the total number of births. You can see the volume of births registered in Sri Lanka from 2014 to 2024. But I divided this particular period into two levels. One is 2014 to 2019. You can observe from here what is presented here. 2014 to 2019, fertility dropped by, the volume of births dropped by 8.8%. But from 2019 to 2024, the fertility drop or the total volume of births drop was something like 31%. Therefore, just after the 2019 COVID-19 and economic recession and continuation of some problems, we are observing very significant drop of births. That drop was something like 31%. Therefore, now one may say that it is only the total number of births. What is the scenario of fertility? Now, what is the total fertility rate of Sri Lanka? Of course, one may say that no official data available after 2016. Of course, we can get some rough estimates from the Registrar General Department until up to 2018. But what could be the current fertility level of Sri Lanka? Of course, we have to go for some indirect methods. Therefore, what we did was, after obtaining some relevant data from the Registrar General Department as well as the Census and Statistics Department, we tried with number of indirect estimation procedures. And then we were able to find out which particular method was more suitable for Sri Lanka. But first, what we did was, after selecting a particular method of estimating TFR for Sri Lanka for the 2024, first we used the same technique to estimate the South Korean fertility. Because South Korea, they have all the information from a standard way until up to 2024. Therefore, we used that indirect method to calculate the TFR of Sri Lanka, and then we were very surprised to see that that indirect method was perfectly matching with the published data of South Korea. Therefore, we noticed that the validity is very high. And then we did the same thing for Sri Lanka. And then we noticed that Sri Lanka is having ultra low fertility. Now, you may be worried about what is meant by ultra low fertility. Ultra low fertility means any country is having TFR of 1.3 or below that level, we call ultra low fertility. Sri Lankan fertility, after using that particular indirect method, you can observe that Sri Lankan fertility is dropping very significantly, reaching 1.3 level. Therefore, we are pretty sure that even though there is no official data on the current fertility level of Sri Lanka, but we are pretty sure that Sri Lankan fertility has dropped to 1.4 level, which is even below the US level, Australian level, UK, Germany, that level. Those are well-developed countries, but they can manage the fertility drop. They have resources, and they are giving a lot of incentives to people to reproduce. But with that also, people not reproducing. That's a big problem. You can see our natural increase. The difference between births and deaths. 2012, there was a positive component in the natural increase, which is presented here. You can see from here, this end. We had 12 additional people compared to the 1,000 population. But look at what is happening 2024. Additional component is only 2. That means compared with the number of deaths, number of births, it is more or less merging together. Some of the countries in the world, if you take countries like Japan, this curve is going even up. The red one is coming further down. The births are lower. The deaths are higher. Therefore, like Japan, from 2007, Japanese population is declining. Likewise, there are many countries you observe. Now, you can see here again demonstrated here very clearly how the Sri Lankan fertility has declined until up to this low level, 1.32, ultra low fertility or entering into the ultra low fertility. But the point I want to mention is that Sri Lankan total population from 2022, it was 22.18. From that onwards, our size of the population is declining. Once you get the 2025 figure, it is going down. But you can see the replacement level. Most of the countries, they try to have the replacement level, but we are well below the replacement level. Therefore, what are the implications? We are going to have all kind of implications. I think I have mentioned some of them. Therefore, it is very clear, population is declining, and there are so many other implications along with that. Now, let me move into 1 or 2 last slides. Now, what are the reasons for drastic decline? I, in fact, mentioned a drop of marriages and not entering into the marriages, postponement of the marriages, and abortion, particularly medical abortion, and contraception also. I would say contraception is somewhat not very high now. Earlier it was something like 70%, that now might have declined. And rise of divorces and family disputes. In Sri Lanka, per day, lawyers are submitting 300 divorce cases for the courts. Therefore, you can see how much family disputes are operating now. And also, separations, family disputes, and also finally, there's something called subfertility. Subfertility also. And then, overall implications of ultra-low fertility in Sri Lanka. Apart from the decline in total population, our labor force will decline, preschool population will decline, school-going population and also declining. There are a lot of socio-economic problems. There are problems to the business sector. And also then, my last slide, one before the last slide, you can see that policy options you can think about. No action, fertility will go further down. Strong action, fertility can remain more or less same level. Extra strong action, which is somewhat impossible, fertility may rise. Hardly it has happened in other countries. Final part, as a, do we need the pro-natalist policy? That's the question. Motivating youth to marriage and parenthood is difficult. But the point is, 90% of the youth, they have love affairs in Sri Lanka. 90% of the unmarried youth, they have love affairs. But they are not happy to move into marriage. Therefore, promote the value of marriage and parenthood and family through education and also from the aesthetic field. Now, songs and the films, teledrama, and most of other places if you take. But if you look at what is I presented here, however, the merit or the appreciation of motherhood, appreciation of the motherhood via songs are very rare now. In the past, we had. Therefore, I have a very simple question to ask from you. There's a particular Sinhala song, I think except 1 or 2, all of you can understand Sinhala lyrics. You can notice that here, in this particular lyric, one particular line is representing the reproduction. It's a question for you. Those who don't know, I can put the vocal part to that, then you can easily identify what is that particular line. Sandadiya kota kiri vaturen e diyaren muwaduwa diva maturak wan nalavilligiyen මතකයි මා නැලෙව්වා ජීවිතයෙන් ජීවිතයක් ගෙනදී ඒ ජීවිතයට කිරිදී පනදී මා දැඩි කළ අම්මා ආදරයේ උල්පත වූ අම්මා. My presentation. Okay, thank you very much. And I think clap is not sufficient. We have to collect some money.
Thank you very much, Professor, for that valuable address and giving us something to think about. And ladies and gentlemen, just as he mentioned, it's much easier to start a journal, but the difficult part is continuing the momentum. So let's make sure that all of us give our support and contributions to FPA Sri Lanka to keep this conversation going on SRHR. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege to invite our guest of honor to the stage. As the Director General of Health Services, he has played a central role in guiding Sri Lanka's healthcare system with dedication and resilience. His leadership continues to shape policies that improve the lives and well-being of countless citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause as we welcome our guest of honor, Director General of Health Services, Dr. Asela Gunawardena.
Hi everyone, good morning to all of you. Dr. Ravi, the WHO representative to Sri Lanka, all the ministry officials or the DDGs and the directors of the Ministry of Health, Ms. Arunima Salin, the President of the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, the keynote speaker today, Professor Arun Kumar Sabaratnam, Editor-in-Chief, Professor Indra De Silva and Professor Sanat Lanarol, all the other distinguished invitees, all the media personnel, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is both privilege and a pleasure for me to address you today on this important occasion, the official launch of ReproSex, the International Journal on Sexual and Reproductive Health. Let me begin by congratulating the editorial board, researchers, reviewers, and all those behind the vision and the realization of this journal. Today marks not only the unveiling of a publication, but the birth of a platform, one that will foster dialogue, innovation, and evidence-based action in a domain that touches the very core of human dignity, health, and rights. Sexual and reproductive health is not merely a medical issue. It is a human right issue. It is a gender equity issue. And yes, it is a development issue. When individuals are empowered with knowledge, access to services, and the freedom to make informed choices about their bodies and relationships, the ripple effects are profound. Healthier families, stronger communities, and more equitable societies. Yet, despite decades of progress, significant challenges remain. In many parts of the world, the stigma, misinformation, cultural taboos, and policy gaps continue to hinder access to sexual and reproductive health services. Adolescents lack comprehensive sexual education. Women still face barriers to safe maternity care. LGBT individuals are too often marginalized in health system, and reproductive rights are still a point of contention rather than a consensus. This is why the ReproSex matters. The journal arrives at a pivotal time. ReproSex promises to be more than a repository of articles. It is a space for critical thought, diverse voices, and cross-sectional collaboration. It will amplify research from both high-income and low-resource settings. It will bring policy and practice into conversations. It will challenge assumptions and shine a light of neglected areas, be it reproductive justice, contraception access, menstrual health, fertility rights, sexual violence, or gender-based identity. In doing so, it will bridge the gap between knowledge and action, between the laboratory and the community, and between global frameworks and the local realities. I commend the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka for taking this bold step. Since 1953, Family Planning Association has been at the forefront of providing family planning, sexual health services, and advocacy in Sri Lanka. Its affiliation with the International Planned Parenthood Federation brought the global best practices into our national context. With ReproSex, FPA is now extending its impact into the realm of scholarly publishing and amplifying Sri Lanka's voice in the international SRH discourse. I also want to recognize the contribution of editors-in-chief, Professor Indradal De Silva and Professor Sanath Ranrol, members of the editorial board, authors, and all other contributors. Launching a journal is no easy task. It requires vision, commitment, intellectual leadership. The distinguished scholars who has guided this effort deserve our deepest appreciation. The inaugural issue itself covers a wide range of topics, from fertility trends to menstrual hygiene, from contraception in perimenopause to the legal challenges faced by female sex workers. This diversity reflects the complexity of SRH and the importance of addressing it from multiple angles. To the researchers, may you continue to ask bold questions and challenge the status quo. To the policymakers, may the evidence published here guide your decisions and resource allocations. To the educators and the clinicians, may this journal support your advocacy, your teaching, and your care. And to the readers around the world, may ReproSex inform, inspire, and ignite the change we seek the realm of sexual and reproductive health. As we launch ReproSex today, let us commit not only to knowledge but to its application. Let's be unwavering in our pursuits of a world where every individual, regardless of gender, age, income, or geography, has the right for information and the means to make empowered decisions about their sexual and reproductive lives. Once again, I extend my heartfelt congratulations to everyone who made this journal possible. I look forward to witnessing the impact of ReproSex will have not just in academic circles but in the lived realities of people around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words and well wishes. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we give another big round of applause to Dr. Asela Gunawardena. Up next, we would like to shine the spotlight on a performance that celebrates our rich culture and heritage. We hope you enjoy our first cultural presentation this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause and welcome Sri Lanka Police Cultural Unit. Thank you very much, Sri Lanka Police Cultural Unit, for that captivating performance. Ladies and gentlemen, I think they deserve another big round of applause. So let's put our hands together for them. We have prepared for you a short video that gives us a closer look into the journal that we will be launching in just a few minutes. So let's take a look at the screen now.
In a world where evidence drives change, a new voice emerges in sexual and reproductive health research, ReproSex. The International Journal on Sexual and Reproductive Health is your global platform for innovation. This peer-reviewed international open access journal is published twice a year, in June and December. ReproSex champions innovation and inclusion across all disciplines of SRHR. ReproSex publishes high-quality original research, systematic reviews, insightful commentaries, case reports, and policy analyses. We embrace a truly multidisciplinary perspective from medicine and public health to law, economics, demography, and social sciences to address critical gaps in SRHR knowledge. With a rights-based, equity-focused lens, our articles uphold the sexual and reproductive health needs of people of all ages, gender identities, and orientations. ReproSex is published by the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, a globally connected, locally owned non-governmental organization. FPA Sri Lanka has been an accredited member of the International Planned Parenthood Federation since 1954. Our editorial board and international advisory committee are composed of leading experts from around the world. The ReproSex editorial board represents a diverse range of disciplines, ensuring a well-rounded and inclusive scholarly perspective. This global team of scholars helps maintain the highest academic and editorial standards, guiding every issue of the journal. Every article in ReproSex is freely available to all under a Creative Commons Attribution CC by 4.0 license. This means research published here can be read, shared, and built upon without barriers, maximizing its reach and impact. We believe knowledge should be open to empower communities and inform policy worldwide. Join the ReproSex community in shaping the future of SRHR. If you're a researcher, scholar, or professional producing high-quality work, consider publishing with us. Visit www.reprosex.lk, submit your manuscript, and contribute to a journal that amplifies your work on an international stage.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we arrive at the moment we've all been waiting for, the official launch of ReproSex, the International Journal on Sexual and Reproductive Health. Ladies and gentlemen, this journal represents years of planning, vision, and collaborations, and today it comes to life as a platform for dialogue, research, and advocacy for SRHR. And all of us here in this audience now have the privilege of witnessing this historic launch. So now, to signify the official launch of the journal, I would like to invite a few dignitaries to please join us on stage, and they will be presenting the journal to some of our special invitees. And while the invitees are being presented with the journal, each of you in the audience will receive a copy of your own. So now, to do the honor of presenting the journal signifying the official launch, I would like to invite Professor Indralal De Silva, Emeritus Professor of Demography, University of Colombo, Professor Sanath Lanarol, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist, Castle Street Hospital for Women Teaching, Mrs. Aruni Marceline, President, Board of Directors, FPA Sri Lanka, and Dr. Ruchita Pereira, Executive Director, FPA Sri Lanka. That will be our presentation party, ladies and gentlemen, and till they join us up, I would like to invite our esteemed invitees to to join us on stage to receive their copy of the journal. It's my pleasure to invite Dr. Asela Gunawardena, Director General of Health Services, our guest of honor for the day. His Excellency Wiebo, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands to Sri Lanka, Dr. Rui Paulo de Jesus, Country Representative, World Health Organization, Mr. Fungsho Wangye, Officer in Charge, UNFPA, Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arukumaran, former President, International Federation of Gynecology and Obstetrics, Professor Hisake Lumbigon, immediate past President, the Asia and Oceania Federation of Obstetrics and Gynecology, AOFOG, Professor Jung Shin Park, Vice President, AOFOG, Professor Kung Hizing Su, President-elect, AOFOG, Dr. Rokana Hattotua, Secretary General, AOFOG, Professor Hiroki Hajiyama, Editor-in-Chief, Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology Research, Dr. Christia Padalina, Treasurer, AOFOG, and Professor Krishnadu Gupta, Deputy Secretary General, AOFOG. The historic launch of Sri Lanka's first international journal on sexual and reproductive health, ReproSex. A massive round of applause for everyone who has contributed to the success of this journal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, after that amazing launch, we definitely must take a few moments to recognize and honor those whose contributions have been instrumental in ensuring the success of the launch of this journal. Therefore, we will now present tokens of appreciation to the editorial board of the ReproSex Journal in gratitude for their valuable contributions. So first, I would like to invite to please join us on stage Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arukumaran, former President, International Federation of Gynecology and Obstetrics, to receive his token of appreciation. Next, it's my pleasure to invite Professor Indralal De Silva, Emeritus Professor of Demography, University of Colombo. Up next, it's my pleasure to invite Professor Sanat Lanaro, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist, Castle Street Hospital for Women. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to request all of you to give a hearty, enthusiastic round of applause because our editorial board, this is a voluntary service and none of them receive any monetary compensation for their service. And up next, I'd like to invite Professor Atula Kaluarachi, Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Chair, University of Colombo. Next, can we please have Dr. Lakshman Senanayaka, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist, Specialist in Gender-Based Violence. Up next, it's my honor to invite Professor Kumudu Vijayawardena, Emeritus Professor of Community Medicine, Specialist in Gender-Based Violence, University of Sri Jayawardenepura. Next, it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Pramila Sena Naika, Specialist in Sexual and Reproductive Health. Next, I'd like to invite Professor Dilip De Silva, Professor of Community Dentistry, Specialist in Health Finance, University of Peradeniya. Up next, can we please have Professor Amala De Silva, Professor in Economics, University of Colombo. Next, Professor Kalinga Tudor Silva, Emeritus Professor of Sociology, University of Peradeniya. Up next is my honor to invite Professor K. Karuna Tilaka, Senior Professor of Sociology, Chair, University of Kelaniya. Up next, Professor P.R. Nishara Fernando, Professor in Sociology, University of Colombo. Professor Pratibha Mahanamahewa, Professor in Law, University of Colombo. Next, it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Lahiru Kodituaku, Specialist in SRH during emergencies in Sri Lanka Medical Association. And next, can we please have on stage Professor Sunetra Pereira, Professor of Demography, Chair, University of Colombo. Next, it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Arya Ratna Manatunga, Consultant Venereologist, National STD AIDS Control Program, Ministry of Health. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Chandima Siritunga, Director, Maternal and Child Health, Family Health Bureau, Ministry of Health. Next, member in the editorial board, Dr. Vindhya Kumarapalli, Director, National STD AIDS Control Program, Ministry of Health. Next, I'd like to request the presence of Dr. Ranjit Batuantudave, Director, Health Promotion Bureau, Ministry of Health. Dr. Sharada Jailat, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist, Ministry of Health. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Prabhat Randombage, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist, University of Kelaniya. Up next, can we please have Professor Rasika Herath, Professor in Obstetrics and Gynecology, University of Kelaniya. Dr. Himali Herath, Consultant Community Physician, Family Health Bureau, Ministry of Health. Next, can we please have Dr. Manoj Fernando, Dean, Faculty of Applied Sciences, Rajarata University of Sri Lanka. Next, it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Sujata Samarakon, Consultant Venereologist and Public Health Specialist. Professor C.D. Ekanayaka, Senior Lecturer, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist, Sabaragama University of Sri Lanka. Dr. Kapila Ranasinghe, Senior Consultant Psychiatrist, Specialist in Sexual Health. Up next, I'd like to invite Professor S. Samita, Professor in Biostatistics, University of Peradeniya. And at last but definitely not the least, can we please have Dr. Asoka Virakodi, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist and Clinical Director, Royal Went Hospital, South Wales, UK. And I'd like to say thank you very much to our presentation party. You may please take your seats in the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we give a big round of applause to the editorial board of the newly launched journal. Ladies and gentlemen, their services are rendered purely for the betterment of Sri Lanka and betterment of the world. So thank you very much for your invaluable support and contributions. So ladies and gentlemen, following the launch of this journal, it's only fitting that we move into a review of this. So now to do the honors, I would like to invite an esteemed speaker to the lectern up next. Professor Kalinga Theodore Silva holds a BA from the University of Peradeniya and a PhD from Monash University, Australia. He served as the Executive Director of the Center for Poverty Analysis from 2001 to 2002, Executive Director of the International Center for Ethnic Studies, ICES, from 2007 to 2008, and Director Research, ICES Kandy, from 2016 to 2018. He is Professor Emeritus at University of Peradeniya, where he served the Department of Sociology and the Faculty of Arts in various capacities for almost 40 years, ladies and gentlemen. He served as the Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Network in Social Science and Health from 2000 to 2022. Currently, he works as the President Director of the Intercollegiate Sri Lanka Education Program. He is the author of Decolonization, Development and Disease, A Social History of Malaria in Sri Lanka, published in 2014 by Orient Black Swan, and he is a joint author of Checkpoint, Temple, Church and Mosque, a collaborative ethnography of war and peace. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my greatest pleasure to invite on stage Emeritus Professor in Sociology, University of Peradeniya, Professor Kalinga Theodore Silva.
Good morning, everyone, distinguished invitees and participants. I'm very happy to be involved in this event for a number of reasons. But most of all, my job is to basically give you a brief introduction about the content of the journal just released, okay? So that not only you will get a free copy of this publication, but you will read it and use what you learn in your practice and maybe whatever you do in your life. I have prepared a very short PowerPoint presentation, but after watching the proceedings, I was a bit hesitant because I don't know at what point it will collapse. At that point, please don't ask any questions from me. Okay, so the aims and objectives of this journal is very much specialized, very much mentioned in this page. So I will not go into it in detail. This is a very interesting and very useful collection covering different topics. I think there is a total of about 8 or 9 articles of different kinds. You have a leading article, original articles, and then review articles, commentaries, brief report, and so on and so forth. I think this is a very useful effort to not only produce knowledge, but I understand that there is a strong desire on the part of the esteemed editors of this journal to somehow influence policy and action relating to reproductive health. I like the shorter version of the title much more than the longer version for a number of reasons. ReproSex. After listening to Professor Indralal, I probably got some idea about why repro is in red and sex is in blue. Because I think what we, as a sociologist, perhaps an important observation is probably we don't have a serious issue about sex or sexuality. There might be enough of it in our society, but what we are concerned about is the reproduction. Sexuality is not actually used to produce required number of children for the country. So that is a big issue that is raised in this very first article that Professor Indralal already introduced, so I will not go into it in detail. But I think these are some of the key contributions of this journal, as I see it. Establishment of a new journal on sexual and reproductive health. Actually, establishing a new journal is very much a challenging task, but sustaining it over a long period of time with contributions from researchers is a more difficult challenge. I guess all of you will help sustain this journal. So producing it is enough, not enough. We need to actually make use of the findings of this journal. And this is also an international journal. I'm very happy, very proud that the Family Planning Organization in Sri Lanka has taken this initiative to produce an international journal on sexual and reproductive health. So this is not only for Sri Lanka. This is for the whole global population and various agencies, including World Health Organization and maybe other organizations involved. So I think it's not only a credit to Family Planning Organization, but it is a credit to the whole country, because this is a journal which will discuss not only Sri Lankan experience about sexuality and reproductive health, but also global experience. Another thing I like very much about this particular journal and the issue is the transdisciplinary approach. I think that we use different terms, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary. I prefer to use the word transdisciplinary because, we are looking at reproductive health, not only from a public health angle, but also from a legal angle, from a feminist angle, human rights angle, and so on and so forth. So when you say transdisciplinary, simultaneously we look at issues from this integrated holistic framework. I think that is what we are trying to promote in this journal. And in this particular issue, it covers several vital areas. And obviously it was initiated by Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, which has a long history of involvement in reproductive health issues in the country. But I also, as a sociologist, I also would like to request a few further improvements. Of course, not immediately, but maybe after some time. I like the international character of the journal, but I feel that there should be more articles from our neighboring countries, at least from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal. All these countries are going through very important transitions, demographic transitions right now. So we should actually take advantage of this journal to reflect on these experiences. And also another thing I would like to propose, maybe for the future, would be a kind of policy dialogue. Policy dialogue meaning a dialogue between researchers and the practitioners. And actually we had a similar effort recently in Colombo University, a policy dialogue relating to, I think, digital access, an elderly issue, where we tried to bring together researchers and practitioners. I think similarly, maybe in every issue or maybe every other issue, try to initiate a policy dialogue around certain issues. And I will highlight some of those as I go on. And then thematic issues, maybe another one. Actually, the issue that Professor Indralal raised about ultra-low fertility may be a useful theme, looking at different countries, different experiences. And as I was listening to Professor Indralal, one thing that came to my mind is that, in Sri Lanka, a lot of people are moving out of the country right now for various reasons. So how do we factor that into these estimates and trends? We may be losing fertility in our country, but maybe we are contributing to fertility in other countries like Australia, where, of course, they are now trying to get rid of, people from other countries. But that is something that we should explore. So thematic issue around that will be useful. And invited articles on popular topics from researchers in Sri Lanka and outside will be useful. Brief review of... actually, I have changed my plan a little bit because Professor Indral already presented his paper. So I want to touch on three articles, only two listed here, but three important articles in this volume 1, issue 1. One is a comparative study of reproductive autonomy of rape services in Sri Lanka. Rape survivors in Sri Lanka. This is by, I guess, a legal expert looking at the legal dimension of basically, the rape victims. And the authors tend to argue that we should perhaps liberalize the opportunities for the artificial ending of fertility. And it's a very, very interesting, very useful article. But here, actually, we know about this particular issue. There are diverse opinions in the country among different people. I think 2 or 3 times they tried to bring in new legislation that will in some ways make it easier for people to go for abortion. But it was not successful for a variety of reasons. At the moment, as the article elaborates, only under one condition this is allowed. But the article basically says that there are many other reasons we should consider seriously. So this is an issue that we should address collectively as a country, policymakers in different fields. So there should be an open discussion about it. Maybe this journal can be a useful forum where this open discussion can be initiated in a non-biased kind of manner, using facts and information from different fields. So this is something that I like to suggest, maybe for future consideration. Another interesting article in this journal is increase in contraception among girls under 18 after 14 years of substantial and steady decline in England and Wales. It's a wake-up call to UK government and a warning to governments in low and middle income countries. So this is a little bit different from what Professor Indralal mentioned. There is increase in contraception among girls, underage girls, in particular countries. And this is called teenage pregnancy in many circles. Actually in England and Wales, they have actually brought this down to a particular level, and then all of a sudden there was a sudden increase. Okay, so fertility trends are changing sometimes due to various reasons, internal, external, and what this author tries to argue is that there is a need for, firstly, there is a global dimension. England and Wales, they have already produced a lot of information about this trend, but it has implications not only for England and Wales, but also the so-called low and middle income countries. So there is a kind of global issue addressed in this particular article. And the other article I want to briefly touch on is this a commentary, Medicine, Patriarchy, and the Ongoing Impact on Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights. So this is an interesting article which might be of interest to medical practitioners here, as well as obviously others. And this article argues that there is a kind of gender dimension of health services in our country. Gender dimension and also patriarchy. Of course, the article, this is by an Indian author. So it's interesting. And the author says that actually it's a critique of medicine, okay? Which I think is necessary even in our country. We obviously, medicine is very important for all of us, but we have to reflect on it. Whether this is a good thing. Now, obviously in sociology, especially the work of Michel Foucault and the birth of clinic, he obviously took a very critical opinion generally on professions, including medicine, and basically take a critical look at it. So this article doesn't use Foucault. I was surprised by that. But nevertheless, what this point out is that we should actually reflect on the various branches of knowledge production in relation to reproductive health and learn from it. This is not to basically basically reject available knowledge production and fields, but to make sure that those fields actually eventually contribute to our society. They have to be useful to society. They have to be useful to them, to the practitioners, but also to society. So this is an issue that perhaps I want to raise in commenting on this particular issue. I don't want to take too much time. I know we are already behind schedule, but let me congratulate the journal, editorial board in particular, for bringing out this journal on time. And let us hope that it will continue and it will make a real difference in terms of reproductive health and health in general in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for that illuminating review of the journal and for giving us a look into the articles in this journal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce the next speaker, we have prepared for you another captivating dance performance that is going to keep the energy high and running today. So please put your hands together one more time for Sri Lanka Police Cultural Unit.
Soy
Well, that display of talent right there is proof that Sri Lanka Police is not just about enforcing law and order, they also excel at the creative arts. And that was their final performance for the day, ladies and gentlemen. Shall we give Sri Lanka Police Cultural Unit another big round of applause? And with that, we now return to one of our co-chairs whose clinical expertise and leadership in the field of obstetrics and gynecology have made him a respected figure in both medical and academic circles. He has been a guiding force in shaping reproductive health services in Sri Lanka. Professor Sanath Lanarol is the past president of Sri Lanka College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, past president of Sri Lanka Menopause Society, and past president of the Perinatal Society of Sri Lanka. He has edited the Sri Lanka Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Sri Lanka Journal of Menopause, and Sri Lanka Journal of Perinatal Medicine. In addition to his clinical expertise and experience, he has vast knowledge in editing, which makes him a perfect fit as the editor-in-chief of the journal. He is the current treasurer of South Asian Federation of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my greatest honor now to invite on stage the co-chair, consultant obstetrics and gynecology, Professor Sanath Lanarol, on stage.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Dr. Asela Gunawardena, guest of honor, Director General of Health Services, and Mrs. Aruni Merceline, President of the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arul Kumaran, our guest speaker and the keynote speaker today, Professor Kalinga Tudor Silva, editor actual, and my co-editor-in-chief, Professor Indradal D. Silva, distinguished members of the editorial board, colleagues, partners, and friends. Good morning. It is both an honor and privilege to stand before you today at the launch of ReproSex, International Journal on Sexual and Reproductive Health. On behalf of our editorial team, I extend a warm welcome to each of you, and I thank you for sharing this important milestone with us. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of eminent clinicians, researchers, policymakers, public health experts, and our partners in academia and international organizations. Your support and encouragement have been the foundation on which this initiative was built in. I have to thank Dr. Rohan Hattotu, the Secretary General of AOFOG, for sharing your valuable time with us, sir. The journey towards the establishing ReproSex began with a simple but profound realization. Sexual and reproductive health is central not only to individual well-being, but also to the broader health and developmental agenda of the nations. Yet, despite the wealth of research being generated worldwide, too often knowledge remains fragmented or inaccessible to those who need it most. We ask ourselves, how do we bridge this gap? The answer we felt was to create a platform, an inclusive, accessible, and international space where evidence-based research, clinical experience, and policy insight could converge. The successful completion of ReproSex 2024, the International Conference on Sexual and Reproductive Health, gave us a momentum, the community, and the shared vision to take this step forward. Today, that vision has materialized in the form of this journal. ReproSex Journal has been founded on three guiding principles. Number one, excellence in scholarship. Number two, global inclusivity. And number three, knowledge into action. Why this is so critical? Because sexual and reproductive health touches every stage of life, from safe childbirth to family planning, from preventing HIV and STIs to addressing gender inequality and reproductive rights. These are the issues that determine whether communities thrive or they are faltering. Yet, in many settings, taboos and stigmas persist. Evidence-based practices are sometimes overshadowed by misinformations. Policies may be slow to adapt to emerging challenges, whether it is new contraceptive technology, the consequence of climatic change on maternal health, or complex interface of reproductive health with digital technology and the social media and artificial intelligence. A journal like ReproSex is not merely a repository of articles. It is a voice for change. It is a space where science and humanity interest, where we affirm that sexual and reproductive health is not optional, but fundamental to the dignity, equity, and progress. As the editorial team, we pledge to uphold the highest standards of integrity, transparency, and the academic interest. We will ensure a robust peer review process that is fair, constructive, and up-to-date. We are also committed to nurturing early career researchers, our young generation, giving a space for new voices and offering mentorship opportunities where possible. For too long, young scholars and practitioners, especially from the underrepresented regions, have struggled to find outlets that recognize and value their work. So ReproSex will fill this gap. At this moment, I must pause to express my gratitude to our founding co-editor-in-chief, Professor Indralal Silva, a well-known figure in Sri Lanka, and our editorial board and advisors who believe in the idea of this journal and gave their time and expertise to shape this. To our international partners and collaborators, including International Planned Parenthood Federation, Swedish Association for Sexual Education, who lent their encouragement and support. President of the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, Mrs. Aruni Merceline, Board of Directors, including Dr. Ruchita Pereira, and all board members of the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, and our keynote speaker, Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arul Kumaran, and guest speaker, Professor Kalinga Tudor Silva. Thank you very much for all of you. Then I'll be failing in my duty if I don't appreciate the hard work done by my team. I should say my team because we worked together for a long time. This is Mr. Suchira Suranga, Director, Organization, Learning and Organization. Then Mr. Janaranga Devasurendra, Assistant Director, Monitoring and Evaluation. Ms. Asinsala Vijayaratna, Monitoring and Evaluation Officer, for their excellent work behind the curtains to make ReproSex a reality. Thank you very much for three of you. Really, you people have inspired Professor Indralal and myself. Otherwise, we won't be able to deliver this excellent work. I have to offer my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. S. Devasurendra of Ananda Press for printing and releasing this with a very short notice. Above all, I thank the contributors, researchers, clinicians, and thought leaders whose manuscript will breathe life into these pages. Without your work, there would be no journal. Today is only the beginning. The success of ReproSex will depend not on the editorial board alone, but on this community gathered here and beyond. I invite you to contribute your research, reviews, and perspectives, engage as peer reviewers, mentors, and advocates, share the journal with your colleagues, students, and institutions, and most importantly, use the knowledge generated here to transform practice into influencer policy and policymakers. Our aspiration is that in the years to come, ReproSex will not only be a respected academic journal, but also a catalyst of positive change in the field of sexual and reproductive health worldwide. As I conclude, let us remember that behind every article, every data set, every policy recommendation, there are real lives. There is the young mother hoping for a safe delivery, the adolescent seeking accurate information on family planning, the couple making choices about their future, the survivors of violence finding a path to healing, etc., etc. So ReproSex is dedicated to them. It is dedicated to advancing science in the service of humanity. So let this launch not just mark the birth of a journal, but the strengthening of a global movement, one that insists on health, right, and dignity of all. While saying that, I conclude my speech, and I was given another task to read the citation and the introduction of our keynote speaker, Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arulkumaran. Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arulkumaran is a world-recognized, truly Sri Lankan figure, and we have to be proud about himself and his achievement. He is very kindly accepted my invitation, and Dr. Rohana Hattatuwa helped us to do a lot of work to bring him to this stage, and thank you very much, sir, for your support. And Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arulkumaran is a world-renowned academic in the field of obstetrics and gynecology. I told you he is a Sri Lankan. He studied in Jaffna Central College and the Mahajana College, Telipele. After his formative years, he got his undergraduate education in the Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo. There, after the graduation with second-class honors, he moved into National University of Singapore. There he has done the groundbreaking research into the CTGs, and he is expert on these CTGs and done international service to the mankind through his wisdom and the research and the knowledge. After that, he was moved to the University of Nottingham, and there he was the professor of obstetrics and gynecology. From there, after acknowledging his talents and his contribution to the obstetrics and gynecology, he was appointed as the professor in St. George's University Hospital of London. Then, after doing a lot of research and a lot of publications and writing books, and he has done a remarkable service to the humankind and the groundbreaking research into this CTG and the delivery of sick babies and a lot of things. There are a lot of things I have no time to do that. After that, by recognizing his work, he was appointed as the president of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists to honor his service. Then he has served his terms and he has done a lot of achievements, and we are proud of that because he has helped Sri Lanka College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists while on chair, and even after that. Then to recognize his service, he was knighted by the Queen Elizabeth, and this is the London Gazette published in Friday, 12 June 2009 during his awarding knightship. So he is addressed as Sir Sabaratnam Arulkumaran after that. Then he was moved into another step, and he was the president of the Federation of International Gynecology and Obstetrics. For his term, he has done a tremendous service to this organization. After that, he was again, after the completing his term of office, he is doing a wonderful service to the academic circles, both in Sri Lanka and international arena. May I invite Professor Sir Sabaratham Arulkumaran for delivering his keynote speech.
Good afternoon, and after that introduction, I don't know whether it's me or someone else. Dr. Aruni, Pram, Indrulal Silva, Sanath, thank you very much for inviting me. So I'm going to take you through a journey about how to implement policies or how to advocate for policy change in sexual and reproductive health. So first, Sanath, thank you for inviting me to give the talk. So it's going to be a little bit of a personal story as well as the issues related to sexual and reproductive health. I had no particular interest in giving this talk. So the way I have structured this talk is actually what are the principles we follow in terms of establishing women's sexual and reproductive rights. First of all, we have to think about how the faculty or the profession in social sciences, medicine evolved, and they were champions who established ethical principles. Second, I will touch on what do you really mean by sexual and reproductive rights of women? Why is there a special emphasis? Why not men's sexual and reproductive rights? Case examples I'll take: rights to safe birth, rights to safe abortion, which is very controversial as mentioned by Professor Kalinga. So we'll touch on that. Rights to postpartum contraception or any contraception, and concluding remarks. So to start with about ethical principles, if we go back in history, there were 7 figures in the history of Western philosophy on medicine who helped us to shape and fulfill the commitment of social sciences, medical sciences with dignity and integrity. The practical application of the ideas on ethics resulted in essential contributions as to how we understand and implement our professional duty. So these are the 7 people. They contributed in different ways. Originally, in the medical world, Hippocrates from Kos in Greece was a barber because the profession of medicine evolved from a barber. So we are all barbers. We sit in the marketplace, remove sebaceous cyst, and so on, and became doctors. But the following people, Plato, Aristotle, John Gregory, they all shaped how we should practice medicine, also how the professional organization should help in developing policies to help humankind. Say, for example, Aristotle was emphasizing on justice. In general, the ethical principle of justice requires that everyone receives his or her due. So not differentiating somebody poor getting poor care, rich getting some other care. So if the condition is the same, then we have to treat them equally with compassion and care. If we take Plato, he was talking about beneficence, which means we had to commit ourselves to a life of service to fellow citizens. So we can't say, once you want to practice social science or medicine, you can't say, I have no time. You have to give your time in order to establish that. And John Gregory contributed quite a lot because he talked about beneficence, non-maleficence, and autonomy. Autonomy of the individual to decide what they want and what they don't want. So if there's someone cancer, don't want to have treatment, that is their autonomy and they must give that. So in basic principle, it commits himself or herself to scientific and clinical competence, makes the protection and promotion of the patient's interest as primary consideration, not the money they are going to get, but the service they provide. So if you take any newspaper in any country, Sri Lanka, England, anywhere, every week there is something about doctors fleecing somebody for something done wrongly and so on. So that principle has to be followed, that we give the best interest to the patient as the primary considerations, and make protection of self-interest a systematically secondary consideration, which we call as ethical practice. Now, Thomas Percival said how the organizations like the Family Planning Association, maybe the Sri Lankan College of ONG, how they should behave in terms of providing the best medical or social care, because they have to really regulate the practice, training, and philosophy behind practice. So it defines organizational professionalism in response to disputes among medical and surgical staff that threaten to paralyze the organization. So no fighting between groups or subgroups, and to give the best. And defines the organization in response to rationing of hospital resources. If the hospital cut down the budget, how do we put certain aspect to something? And the typical example is the national budget for sexual and reproductive rights. If they devote a lot of money for health, vast amount will go to the old people who have cardiology problems, like the ministers and senior figures, but very little will go to the youngsters who need contraception or other things. So how do we balance that? That was mentioned by Thomas Percival. So we will go to these simple principles of beneficence. So it's defined as supportive and individualized, evidence-based practice. Practice is proven to be beneficial. So beneficence is beneficial. And you can take an example of childbirth and how we give respectful care for women in childbirth. And we go to non-maleficence, not to do any harmful practices, because in gynecology, for example, it's not that uncommon. They do a scan and find a marble-shaped fibroids, and they want to do a laparoscopic surgery, which is totally unnecessary. And not only they fleece the money, but also put the patient to have complications. So how do we really regulate our profession to avoid procedures that have insufficient evidence of benefit and avoid disrespect and abuse? Don't shout at patients or clients who are coming to you. Then of justice, we have to treat them with respect, dignity, and informed choice. Sometimes there might be 3 or 4 alternative choices available. We don't express all that. We just express only 1 or 2 that fit us, and then we forget. So that is quite abundant in sexual and reproductive rights. For example, if you go to the gynecological ward, obstetric ward, how many of us talk about contraception for this individual, taking that whole individual and not focusing on the single disease for which they came? So we are lacking in our principles of justice for not giving enough knowledge to look after the whole person for the future. And autonomy is to listen to the woman and families and communicate health knowledge and information so it can be culturally safe and sensitive manner. And ensuring her right to informed consent and refusal, so she can. Sometimes we go, as a pregnant mother, she wants an induction on labor. If there are no reasons, you have to explain. And similarly, we might force ourselves to induce or do an elective section, so which is wrong. So something which we have to make a joint decision as to what is best for the individual. Now, we talk about sexual and reproductive rights. I want to bring the words of Professor Mahmoud Fathallah, who is well known to Pram, and they have worked together. And he was the former president of FIGO, the International Federation, who comes out with wise words. And he said, sexual and reproductive rights are not new set of human rights. They are simply the application of the already recognized list of human rights to the areas of sexuality and reproduction. And few members see firsthand how women's health is often compromised, not because of lack of knowledge, but because of infringement on women's rights. Now, he emphasized this, that it is a layer over the existing human rights, because women face more consequences throughout their life. Infancy, there are sex-selected abortions, before even they are born, genital mutilation, discriminatory nutrition. Adolescents, they have early childbearing, unsafe abortion. Reproductive years, they have sexually transmitted infection, malnutrition. And post-reproductive years, they have similar problems. They are more prone to cardiovascular and gynecological cancers and so on, and lifetime problem of gender violence, occupational and environmental hazards. So I see Dr. Lakshman Senak here. He's a champion on gender-based violence. So that is something which we have to do, continue to do, and it never stops. 1/3 of women are physically abused, 2/3 physically, verbally, or mentally abused. So we had to get rid of that, and we had to put a set of standards to protect this from women. So women have special problems because They had to have menstruation, they had to have pregnancy, they had to deliver, post-delivery problems, and if you ask for contraception, the men run away, the women had to take the contraception. So we have to make sure that we provide the best. And I'm glad Rowan Arthur to have brought the Asia Oceania Federation here today, and they would be champions of this. So if you take the sexual and reproductive rights from old days, in India there was a custom. A very young woman is married to an old man, and the man dies, they push the woman into a fire called sati. Now that has stopped. So that's sex-selective abortion still goes on. Female genital mutilation, millions happen in sub-Saharan Africa. Honor killing and so on. So I'm going to take 3 areas: rights to appropriate contraception. What do we really mean by that? Are we giving and can we improve that? And then I'm going to talk about rights to abortion. It's a very emotional, abortion is a human drama because there are emotional, ethical, legal issues. So how do we navigate? In different countries, it's got to be different. You can't have uniform policy for all countries. And I will give you some example of how to navigate the rights to abortion. And right to life, to means to have, because a woman performs a noble function of having a pregnancy and giving birth to a child for the sake of the family, for the sake of the country. So we have to do our utmost best to keep her safe and give the best of care. So how do we really establish the rights to life? Because that is also part of sexual and reproductive health. And rights to avoid STI. Mainly it is tackled by education, nutrition, healthcare. But I'm going to specifically take 3 areas: contraception, abortion, and rights to life related to pregnancy, giving some example where I was involved. So this is a paper I did in 2012, Saving Mothers' Lives Transform Strategy into Action, which Dr. Sanath Lalnerol mentioned. No point having policies unless we really execute that. So this booklet, which was produced for Institute of Global Health, for national non-governmental organizations, professional organizations, governments to act in order to reduce maternal mortality. Essentially, when I did the analysis with the team at that time, it was clear that there are 3 baskets of care which can save the woman's life. The first basket is contraception. So although it is away from pregnancy, unless they have contraception, they are going to die. Because if the woman gets pregnant in England, she has a 10 per 100,000 chance of dying. If she's not pregnant, she won't have the chance of dying that way. In Sri Lanka, it's just under 30. Some countries, it's 300 per 100,000. So contraception will reduce maternal deaths by 30% if we can give contraception to everybody who needs it. Safe abortion care can give rise to 15%. Because where it is legally allowed, we have to think about abortion, not criticize, because people say you're an abortionist. I say all of us are abortionists. I might support legal abortion. By not supporting the legal abortion, you are supporting illegal abortion. So they will get into problems of infection, death, and so on. But based on a calculation, 15% of lives can be managed, prevented by safe abortion care. Emergency obstetrics, which is postpartum hemorrhage, preeclampsia, is about 55%. So the Sri Lankan College and the government Family Health Bureau, they are doing their best to avoid that. So these are the 3 baskets of care which we have to focus to avoid a maternal mortality. So I'm coming to a real life story. This is a hospital close to London, or just north of London, called Northwick Park Hospital. It's a big hospital where they delivered 5,000 odd cases each year. And during the period 2002 to 2005, there were 10 maternal deaths in 3 years. 10 out of 15,000. The standard in UK is 10 per 100,000, but 10 happened in 15,000. So they are desperate, and the report came out, and the minister at that time rang me and said, you have to go and sort it out, because otherwise the healthcare commission is going to close the hospital. And if they close the hospital, 5,000 women will have to go to some other hospitals for care. So we went there and introduced clinical governance, which I will explain in a minute. And these are 2 figures I am giving you. One is a nurse from Philippines who was working in the hospital. She died after childbirth following C-section due to hemorrhage. The other one, a Sri Lankan woman whose sister was a doctor in the hospital, And she was saying, I'm breathless, I'm going to die, and she died because not adequate care was given. So there are 10 deaths like that. So once I went there, I had to challenge the consultants who are working. 2 consultants were suspended, 2 asked to leave, 1 was transferred from their board duties. So those are difficult decisions against my colleagues or professionals to take. But I had to take it because otherwise this thing would have continued and more deaths would have happened. Because we had to think about the women based on the ethical principles I told you. We had to give our best. And the answer, once I got rid of 4 of them, was to find new staff to come. So I recruited 3 consultants from Sri Lanka because I thought they were good. So Hemantha Sennaka was there already. I see the professor from Colombo. Then there was a consultant from Marriott and Samarage from Gaul. So I said to come with another consultant from Australia, Alda Becker, and help me to organize, because suddenly 4 consultants goes, I'm left with nobody to work. So we managed to turn it around by introducing what we call as clinical guidelines. And the chief executive is Mrs. Mary Wells. She was very happy. And she said, we have turned it around in 18 months. So what we do as a magic, because when an accident happens like that, like a train going through the bridge and falling down, there are a number of reasons. It can be failure of brakes, it can be an untrained driver, he has gone to sleep or no speed check. So similarly, when clinically something goes wrong, then it could be inadequate capacity, inadequate trained staff, not proper educational courses, no proper good communication and teamwork, and no guidelines of how to manage. Patient complaints are ignored, and there are no risk management principles. So these are 7 of these principles for clinical governance. So I had to establish, and I told the chief executive, we had to introduce clinical governance. I went and stood, she couldn't understand, so I said, look at me, right arm, left arm, and these are the things we are going to do. So when we come to services, we didn't have enough midwives because they were all running away because the workload was high. So I had to go to the local council and ask them for salaries of 20 midwives. So they said, how sure are we by giving you the money you are going to save women's lives? So I said, you value your women and say, how much is your woman worth in your council? And give that amount of money and we will cater the services. And introduce evidence-based guidelines, education and training, and audit. And I got hold of midwives from other hospitals, matrons from other hospitals to look into the complaints. So it's not a simple process, but you need a lot of support and help and collaboration to bring about the change. So, for example, this is a table of maternal deaths. If you look at the 4th column, or 5th column, the lack of consultant obstetrician input. So the 10 maternal deaths, 6 deaths happened without a consultant seeing her, which is pathetic, because if you think your wife or your sister or mother goes in, and if you say the senior doctor didn't see and she died, that's disgraceful. So that's what happened, 6 out of 10. One of the problems was the juniors did not know when to inform, so they didn't inform, or the nurse didn't inform. So I introduced this early warning score chart. So forget about what is the exact pulse, blood pressure. You put it on the chart, and if one goes into red, then you inform the consultant to come down. You don't have to give an explanation, you come down. This is used in disciplines in medicine. So we adapted it to the obstetrics because they can have a high blood pressure due to preeclampsia or low blood pressure due to postpartum hemorrhage. So we modified and adapted it, and that was useful. And to monitor how things are working, we must know every month what is happening, how many women are getting admitted to ICU, how many are getting blood transfusion. So I introduced what we call as a maternity dashboard. Maternity dashboard is like a car dashboard. When things are going wrong, it'll warn you. So it's like the petrol going down, you don't bother about it till it goes to red. Then suddenly you start sweating and your bladder starts filling up and then you're rushing. So if you keep that, the parameters of the workload, I'm sorry, it's all small letters, workload, how many normal deliveries, how many C-section, forceps, admission to ICU, blood transfusion, complaints, and review that on a monthly basis, then you know where to pay the attention, where to spend the money. So that helped in many ways to overcome the problem of maternal deaths. Now, I mentioned there were 6 cases where the consultant didn't see, and I went through the confidential inquiry into maternal deaths, which comes out every 3 years. And there again, these are a large number of deaths in the UK, 70% maternal deaths because of suboptimal care. And many of them are due to consultant being not present or informed. So I became president of the college, and the first thing I did was to produce a paper on responsibility of the consultant on call. That means they should be there when there is a postpartum hemorrhage, eclamptic fit collapse patient. And we tried to reverse the whole process. And of course, I got challenging death letters saying, who are you to tell us what to do? But I said, this is not going to change, because unless we change it, it's not going to happen. So I reviewed the figures in the confidential inquiry in 2022, and the 75% has come to 45%. Still, there's suboptimal care in 45%. But nevertheless, we are making steady improvement. Now we go to the subject of human drama about the abortion. The rights to have safe and legal abortion has a lot of issues about the ethical, legal, and moral issues. And unsafe abortions is one of the leading causes of maternal mortality. Now we can prevent this unsafe abortion if they give effective contraception for those who want before they get pregnant. You can think of emergency contraception, you can think about postpartum, and post-abortion contraception you can prevent. But then if it is morally or ethically not acceptable, then you can think which section should have abortion. Not everyone, but some section. Now this is quite important in terms of some countries, and this is England, Ireland. In Ireland, there was always a debate, and this is the example produced by the church in 1983. A way to protect Ireland for good is actually not to allow abortion. The state acknowledges the right to life of the unborn, and with due regard to the equal right to life of the mother. So even if the baby is 6 weeks, if the mother is sick, she can't have an abortion done. If the baby cannot survive, it has severe chromosomal abnormality, still you can't have an abortion done. So she has to carry, sometimes up to full term, everybody asking, how is the baby? You have to say, it's okay, but you know the baby has no head. And then carefully you carry on till term. So she has put under severe pressure, and we had to think about what was going on. So this was going on for decades, and whenever they called a referendum whether to modify the abortion laws, 1/3 said no, 2/3 said no, 2/3 said no, and 1/3 said yes, we had to modify. And the yes, 1/3 are young girls and young mothers who have problems socially, medically, ethically, and so on. And it is important to remember that 1/3, despite the church influences, said they want to change what is known as the Eighth Amendment in the law. And tiny group of volunteers were working, they were trying to influence the church, but they couldn't do much. So this is the type of scene in the referendum in 1992. They brought another referendum to tighten it, because somebody did abortion for mental health problems. Another one did for the mother having malignancy. She went to the hospital. At 18 weeks, she was having chemotherapy. Because she didn't have periods, they thought it was due to the chemotherapy, but she was pregnant. So then she died, but they kept her ventilating for till 23, 24 weeks, using her as a reservoir, a tank, to keep the pregnancy going, to receive the baby at 24 weeks. And there's a dead person without any proper, the heart was beating, but she was completely gone. So that type of things happened, and the referendum was going, and the Irish Family Planning Association was a central key to change the law and to canvass. These are different pictures. And what happened for reason for resistance in Ireland, unable to access to abortion, what they did was Britain and Denmark and Holland allowed abortion. So they took the flights from Ireland, especially if they had sex out of marriage and a pregnancy, and they went. But those who could not go, those are the poor ones, stayed behind in Ireland, and they were sent to the church, to the nuns' seminary or whatever it is. The heads were shaved. They were given jail uniforms carrying a pregnancy. And they were asked to scrub the floor and to do the work. They called them Magdalene laundries. And it was estimated that 35,000 women were forced into this institution, and 6,000 babies died in their care, because once the baby delivered, nutrition was completely a different thing. They changed the names of the babies and adopted to families in Australia, USA, Canada, and so on. So this was going on, not in one part of Ireland, but the whole of Ireland. And these are the girls. The second picture with the goddess there says that that was a graveyard found in the compound, and they recovered bodies of young children. And so not only is this, there was a protest because of that, and they were adopted, as I say, thousands of babies were sold exported to US and Australia. And so the mothers, when they wanted to see the baby, they were not available. So which part of the justice are we going to uphold was the question. So this is a picture. They take the bag, go to England, get the abortion done, and come in the same evening. Now, because they go there to have surgical abortion, so when they come back, if they bleed, then there are no chance of getting into the hospital. If they go into the hospital, they'll be arrested and put into the jail for 13 years. So it was a radical problem for the mother, and balancing was a difficult issue. So in the clinics, in 1980 was 3,320, then it rose to 6,673 because abortion or abortion-related topics are declined. So the Family Planning Association of Ireland took 3 cases to the European courts. One was because she was physically ill, one she was mentally ill, and third, she had suicidal tendencies. And the European court said, these women, according to human rights laws, they should be permitted to have abortion. Although the verdict was given by the European court, the Irish government and the hospital did not want to do it. So whatever they did was a problem. Now, while this struggle was going on, there was an Indian dentist in a city called Galway, and she had a 19 weeks miscarriage. She went with bulging membranes, and then the membrane ruptured. She had striking fever, chills and rigors. But they kept the pregnancy going because when they put the Doptone to listen to the baby's heart, the heart rate was present. So they said, I can't do an abortion. The chance of a baby surviving at 18 weeks ruptured membranes is about 0.5 to 2%. But they kept her going despite a pulse was 160 at high temperature because there was a fetal heart present. So there was a problem there because she's going to die if it is not done. You can't treat sepsis without evacuating the uterus. She died anyway of septic abortion. And then there was this protest in the roads of Ireland saying that never again, and this should be stopped. And there was a public outrage saying that if they are medically indicated, at least, if she has sepsis, heart disease, severe renal disease, it should be allowed. So it so happened, they rang me and asked me to chair the inquiry and see what could be done because this woman had died. They didn't trust a local Irish doctor because they would take sides, so they wanted somebody neutral. So I went to Ireland, and there were people who wrote and in the papers said, I'm a pro-abortion group, chairman of the FIGO, is called the pro-abortion group, and asked me to be removed as chair of the inquiry, but the government insisted that I should continue. And I came out with a report and suggested that they should change a lot of medical recommendations, but also they should change the abortion law. So the abortion law was confusing. The legal status need to be addressed. And the Minister of Health asked me to give us a report, which I presented. And 6 years, nothing happened. So we had to go and mobilize the professional organization, the Irish ONG Society, the Family Planning Association, Citizens Group. So with a lot of small group protests, the government organized a Citizens Bureau, 100 people with different walks of life, lawyers or doctors, teachers, and asked us to address and see whether they can come to a consensus. So I started a questionnaire for them and said, would you provide abortion if there's a physical risk to life? Will you say if there's a risk by suicide, serious physical illness, serious mental illness, and so on? So that is marked in green of those who agreed yes. So for physical risk, almost 99% said they will provide abortion services. But for no reasons, only 64% supported that, and up to 12 weeks. So this was quite a useful plate for us to take it to the Irish Parliament. So the Citizen Assembly voted, and 64% of members also voted that abortion should be made legal on women's request. So this is a very controversial issue. And after agitating, the Parliament convened a parliamentary group in September, December 2017. So I was asked to go and give evidence. They called evidence from Irish doctors, various walks of life, social care, everyone. And they finally came to a conclusion about having a referendum. So if you go into the Google and put my name, Arul Kumar in an Ireland, you get all these videos. I want to spend time with you. And the referendum was done, and 66% of the population voted the abortion law should change, because so many women are dying, so many women are losing, so many mothers don't know where the children are because they were given on forced adoption. So that is the second story about how to establish the rights of women. You can't just stay, you have to agitate with small groups and see what is best for them. Because otherwise their children were dying, they were kept like prisoners, working in laundry, other children were adopted. Now we'll talk about contraception. Now as a house officer or senior house officer at Castle Street, my long commentary for the MRCOG exam was 2,000 cases of postpartum sterilization in 2 years. I thought I was a champion. But what I was doing was wrong, because we didn't have any other methods of contraception at that time. The lip peace loop was just emerging at that time. And they said if you put it in, it'll perforate and go into the baby's brain. All sorts of talks. And the women who were having this sterilization were young. They were 20, 25. And if some babies die, then there are no this thing. And this map shows 1994 to 2024. The women are the ones who get sterilized. The men don't go to the scene. So this was a major problem, which was something to be done. And you go to India, Bangladesh, it's the same thing. They have camps. So there's a surgeon who goes from bed to bed, putting a laparoscope and putting the clips on. They do 300, 400 sterilizations a day. And there was a myth about having IUCD that it'll fall off. And when we had the meeting at the Sri Lankan College, they said 3 women or 4 women had IUCD put in postpartum. By the time they went down the lift, all 4 on the lift or something like that. So it was a problem. So we were thinking about it. Then the wake-up call was tsunami. During the tsunami time, there were a lot of mothers who lost children, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, but they were all sterilized, so they didn't have children. Should we have a long-acting reversible contraceptives, we could have prevented the problem. But we sterilized them, and we didn't have any opportunity to do something. So we got together at Sri Lankan College, and we sort of brainstormed. And from Nine Wells Tea Room, we gave a call to the donor, and we got some funding to change the picture from tubal ligation to postpartum contraception by an IUD, because an IUD is a few cents, and it can be kept for 10 years. If they want to pull it out in 2 years, they can go for it. The two concerns were infection and expulsion. So we said we will train them, because if you put it to the fundus of the uterus, and it won't fall off. Only about 2%, 3% expulsion. And 2%, 3%. This is with the donor from Buffett Foundation, with Rowana Chandrikan, the then health minister. And we were training in Kandy, Nepal, Tanzania, Kenya, 6 countries we did. And we did about more than 60,000 cases, and all were documented with researchers going and making a note of everything. And the expulsion rate was 2 to 5%. And infection rate was less than 1%. So if you can put it within 48 hours in the right place, in the right way, you can. So in many countries, they made it a national policy. In fact, the Family Planning Association, Family Health Bureau, went to the minister and got it circular issued that postpartum long-acting reversible contraception should be offered in Sri Lankan hospitals. So now they have reversible with IUCD and implants. So I think influencing policy to empower women's sexual and reproductive rights is based on ethical principles of beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, and justice. And saving lives focused on 3 baskets of care, which I discussed. One was about safe obstetric care during childbirth by introducing clinical governance, rights to abortion by mobilizing women's associations and professional groups, and rights to contraception by implementation of clinical trials. And any field we take, whether we are medicine, social services, academics, we have to think about these 7 C's. Commitment to the profession of patient care or anyone you are giving. You have to be compassionate, courteous, competent, good communicator, confidence, and coordinate the team, because we provide services whether we are in social care, public health, or medicine as a team. So we had to build the team, and each one of us had to follow these 7 principles. And based on the proposals or the prognostication for women's and sexual reproductive rights to become norm, it'll take a long time. If you take South Asia, it'll take another 195 years. So how can we accelerate that? Make the women as equal in terms of salary, in terms of holidays, in terms of schooling and so on. We need to. And part of the issue is the men do the policies for the women's health. So unless we, men and women, partner and empower the women, it is not going to happen. So I'm glad that you have a mixed audience of men and women, and your journal, Dr. Indra Silva and Sanath, will catalyze men and women working together. In other words, we are asking women not to push us out. We are going to be part of you and to help. I saw this being sent to me just a few days ago, and it attracted me. I don't know the author, but the author's name was there, so I like to acknowledge. This is a woman carrying the washing machine, cooking utensils, brush, everything, and taking the 2 children. So this is not merely a statue, it's a symbol. Powerful reminder of the countless women on those shoulders our society quietly rests. And this service is invisible, they are sacrificed daily. They love us for nothing in return, so they don't ask anything in return, they do the services. And yet, without them, nothing would stand. And it is not merely an act of gratitude, but a moral duty toward those who perform those vital functions and too often forgotten work in the world. So I hope your journal will be reflecting this, that you give and respect every single woman and establish the rights the woman should have. It's not easy, but it is possible. And this picture shows it is possible. This is the word women and children first came from this picture. This is a ship, Birkenhead, sailing from South Africa. And the boat sinks, and the captain orders women and children first to the lifeboats. Captain and crew stood on board, and they were playing the music to soften the mood. And this is an act of professionalism and chivalry, and this is the ethical principle we have to follow. And of those on board, 193 of 643 survived, the others sunk. But the principle was established, the men should take the responsibility and take the courage to stand for women. So I would like to give my best wishes to the Family Planning Association, part of IPPF, and for the launch of the Journal of Sexual and Reproductive Health. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arukumaran, for that insightful, eye-opening address with real-life examples that truly highlighted how important it is that we pay more attention to this subject. So, ladies and gentlemen, shall we put our hands together for Professor Sir Sabaratnam Arukumaran? And of course, we would also like to thank Professor Sanath Lanarol for sharing his valuable perspectives with us earlier. Thank you very much, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have almost come to the end of our formalities here today. But before we wrap things up, we definitely must take a moment to express our heartfelt appreciation to all the energy, time, and effort that has gone into this journey. Therefore, to do the honor of expressing our sincere gratitude to all those who contributed, it's my pleasure to invite to the lectern Executive Director, FPA Sri Lanka, Dr. Ruchita Pereira.
Distinguished guest of honor, Dr. Asela Gunawardena, Director General of Health Services, President of the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, Ms. Aruni Marcelin, members of the Board of Directors of FPA Sri Lanka, our keynote speaker, Professor Sabaratnam Arul Kumaran, guest speaker, Professor Kalinga Tudor Silva, editors-in-chief, Professors Indralal De Silva and Sanath Lanarol, distinguished members of the editorial board, colleagues, partners, and friends. As we come to the close of this historic ceremony, I wish to extend my heartfelt thanks to each of you for your invaluable contribution. From ReproSex 2024 last year to the launch of this journal today, the journey has been truly inspiring. What began as an ambitious conference in November 2024 has now blossomed into a permanent publication, a testament to the vision, dedication, and hard work of the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, our editorial team, and our partners. I'm especially grateful to our distinguished co-chairs, Professors Indralal De Silva and Sanath Lanarol, and our guest of honor, Dr. Asela Gunawardena, for their support and encouragement. I also wish to thank our speakers, Professor Sabaratnam Arul Kumaran and Professor Kalinga Tudor Silva, for their insightful contributions for today's launch. Special appreciation goes to our partners, IPPF, RFSU, UNFPA, and SKIPA, whose collaboration has been invaluable in making this vision a reality. This occasion demonstrates the power of partnership and what can be achieved when evidence and advocacy come together. When we invited the world to ReproSex 2024, we promised a platform to explore innovative solutions and shape the future of SRH in Sri Lanka and beyond. With the ReproSex Journal, that promise is now taking root, but today is not the end of the journey. It is only a beginning. With the launch of ReproSex, the International Journal on Sexual and Reproductive Health, we are committing to publishing 2 issues per year to sustain both national and global dialogue on SRH. We must now keep the momentum alive. That means reaching out to clinicians, academics, civil society, groups, and youth. Encouraging them to lead, read, contribute, and engage with this journal. I, on behalf of the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka and the editorial committee, invite all of you to stay engaged. Read the articles in ReproSex Journal and share them with your colleagues, students, and your networks. Awareness leads to action. Partner with us. Collaborate with FPA Sri Lanka to disseminate research, whether through teaching, social media, or integration into development programs. Advocate for change. Use the evidence from this journal to influence programs, policies, and reforms. Whether you are a health worker, policymaker, community leader, your voice is essential to ensure that research translates into real-world impact. Thank you once again for your commitment and support. Let us build today's achievement to advance sexual and reproductive health for everyone in Sri Lanka. Together we can sustain this momentum and ensure that ReproSex Journal becomes a lasting resource for positive change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruchita Pereira, for your sincere words of gratitude. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what a remarkable journey that we have shared today. The launch of ReproSex Journal not only marks the beginning of a journal, it also signifies the continuation of a movement that will touch the lives of those in Sri Lanka and across the globe. So as we look ahead, I would like to remind all of you that this journal will be published twice a year in June and December, and it's going to be a platform for all of you. So we would like to warmly invite you to contribute to the journal, write and send in your articles so that together we can expand the global conversations on sexual and reproductive health and rights. And before we conclude, a special word of gratitude once again goes to the editorial board. Thank you very much for your support and expertise. It was an honor being your MC today. My name is Nadi Balasurya. Once again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a pleasant day ahead.